Hi, ladies. Psychotherapist and healer Nani is here. So, this week's messages are entitled Date Like a Man. Now, I want to emphatically state here again, I say this oftenly, I am not a male basher. There are wonderful men out there. These messages are geared to the women that are not attracting those men. These messages are geared to the women that are habitually attracting the wrong type of guy, the narcissistic kind, the emotionally unavailable, the physically unavailable, the gaslighter, the breadcrumber, the commitment phobic, the hot and cold guy, those types of guys. If you are habitually attracting unfulfilling relationships, then these messages are for you. If you have a wonderful champion in your life and you are having a relationship of partnership and equality with a wonderful man that supports you and sees your value, then you don't have any reason to be listening to these messages. There may be other messages for you to listen to, but these are not them. These are for the women that keep attracting the broken guys that haven't done their work. That's why these guys are commitment phobic and gaslighters and narcissistic and all that other stuff. It's because they have emotional wounds that they have not healed, and they cannot and will never be able to be what you need them to be. And oftentimes, where do you see them? You see them in the dating sphere and in the dating realm of life. So these messages are meant to give women agency and power in an area of life where we have historically lost our agency and lost our power. And you know what? I see this time and time again in my psychotherapy practice. Amazing, powerful women who are owning their crap in all other aspects of life. And yet, in the dating area of life with regard to men, they're constantly giving away their power. And I've told you through other messages in this YouTube channel and in my Instagram channel why we have historically done that. There are actually really good cultural reasons, historical reasons, and mental and emotional reasons as to why we have learned to do that and been programmed to do that historically. So listen to those messages so you can get a little bit more information about that. For that same reason, men tend to date, if I could say this, in a healthier way. Now, I'm not talking about the toxically masculine men with the chauvinistic mentalities, manipulating women and being dishonest and using all those disclaimers so that they could basically have a lot of sex without any moral repercussions. That means that they are in denial of the manipulation that they are constantly engaging in, and the dishonesty that they're constantly engaging in order to manipulate women into being able to have as much sex with them as possible without giving these women what they know these women are looking for. And that's part of the toxic masculinity dynamics, that they need to live in this denial of what they're actually doing and the karma that they're constantly incurring, by the way, in order to constantly manipulate women so that they can have these pseudo relationships and all of this sex, because they're not really ready or able to participate in healthy, mature, romantic love and partnership. And if you're falling for that hook, line, and sinker time and time and time again, and then blaming yourself because you are not good enough to attract somebody that will stay, well, number one, you keep engaging in this self-defeating pattern and you keep repeating this cycle because you haven't healed it. But number two, you believe you are not worthy still of something real. And at the end of the day, ladies, we attract and manifest in life what we believe we deserve and we are worthy of having in life. So if you keep attracting these unfulfilling relationships and these toxic relationship dynamics, it's because fundamentally and at the core, you still believe that you are worthy and deserving of this and nothing more. And you are tolerating these types of behaviors, and we also continue to attract what we tolerate. We get what we tolerate in life. So what you need to start changing in your life is some of those mentalities that are keeping you stuck in these patterns. And so men tend to date in a healthier way because historically and culturally, they have been taught, you are a man. Everything you do to sow your seed out there is okay. That is your purpose in life, to keep the species going. They have been taught that we are dependent on them because historically we have been, and that we are desperate for them. And so they have been historically given the upper hand and the power in the dating sphere of things. And that has not really fully shifted yet. When will that shift? The more that we come to realize that that dynamic no longer works, that those relationships where there is an imbalance of power no longer work, and that in this 21st century world, more and more, what we are requiring in relationships, not only women, but men also, that's why they're being called to rise up. They're being called to evolve. That's why this movement of breaking free and healing toxic masculinity is taking place right now in the world, because it's not working for them either. Yes, they may still be getting a lot of sex, but they're hurting themselves in bigger ways because they're not getting what they fundamentally, innately, truly desire and need, which is true, fulfilling partnership, intimacy, and connection, which is what we have been looking for all along as women. But because of the disbalances of power that we historically got programmed to experience and attract and expect in romantic love and in marriage, we have unconsciously been, both men and women, perpetuating these unhealthy, unhappy dynamics. So in this week's messages, I'm going to be talking about the differences in the dating behaviors of men and the differences in the dating behaviors of women, how they have disempowered us as women for many years. And when we understand these patterns, how we can begin to adopt some of the healthy patterns in dating and mentalities in dating that men innately and inherently possess, to give us not an upper hand in dating, but equality. And as we expect equality from a man, then those that are looking to have the upper hand, to have the power, we will begin to unconsciously release and refuse. And therefore, we will not continue to attract those types of guys, because now we have empowered ourselves to know that we are worthy and deserving of a wonderful man who will champion our light, who will be able to embrace our light, who will accept us as we are with our defects and our faults as well, who will not need the upper hand, who will not need the power, that will allow us to grow and evolve to become the woman in a relationship who, by the way, doesn't need the power either, doesn't need to control, but has evolved enough to be able to share intimacy, light, power, support, love, affection, and energy, instead of having to take affection, take power, take support, take attention, or take energy. In these old 1950s type relationships, those were the dynamics. She took from him and he took from her. And we're still in the process of evolving as a species to have these relationships nowadays that are equal partnerships, where we grow from one another, where we hold up the mirror to one another, where we hold each other accountable for the frightened parts of our personalities, like the writer of the book, Spiritual Partnerships, states, who hold each other accountable for where we need to grow, but that allow ourselves to be held accountable by the other for those frightened parts of our personality when they show up, and for those parts of our personality that need to engage in those old power dynamics. These are the only types of relationships, ladies and gentlemen, that will work in the 21st century. And we can learn from each other. We can take from men their confidence in knowing that there is somebody for them out there, that they have something to offer to the world and to women. They inherently know this because they've been given this power. They've been given this confidence historically. It's been programmed into them. But they can gain from us knowing that they have the power to nurture and support individuals in a very deep way. That's why women often gain the power in marriage and in family, because this is where we thrive and this is where we shine. But men are being called on more and more to be better nurturers, better supporters, to connect with their emotional selves like never before. We are meant to complement each other in the sexes and in the genders more than ever. Before, our differences became power struggles. Today, in the 21st centuries, our differences are called to bring us together, to learn from each other's strengths, to heal our own weaknesses by learning and gaining from the other's strengths, and by yielding to the other's strengths and embracing the other's strengths and supporting the other's strengths instead of feeling threatened by them. So, in this week's messages, that's what I'm going to talk about. The differences in dating, which is where it all begins, right? Between men and women, and where women can learn from men in this area to become more empowered so we can have more equality, not only in the dating realm, but where it becomes a committed relationship leading to your true and permanent partnership and perhaps marriage, which then will allow you to begin that type of commitment with the right foundation and from the right place. Otherwise, those disbalances that happened in dating now will be transferred into the marriage relationship. Unfortunately, the balance of power shifts, but there will still be inequality, which will continue to perpetuate dissatisfaction, unhappiness, and unfulfillment, which will lead to emotional and physical withdrawal, which will lead to resentment, which will ultimately lead to the breaking down of relationship, intimacy, and communication. Trust me, I see this time and time and time again in my psychotherapy practice with couples. So tune into my next message, which will get into these differences, specifically what they look like and how they show up in the dating realm, and how you can learn from these differences in order to balance out dating and relationships in a much more powerful and fulfilling way. See you then.